Welcome children. Today's topic will be dealing with the modifications of stem. In the previous video we have talked about what is the structure of the stem and what parts of a plant constitute the shoot system. And these structures such as the flowers, the leaves, the buds, they perform different kinds of functions and the stem holds them together. So the stem is a very important part of the plant. Apart from those, whatever function it is performing, it is performing some additional functions at times and it undergoes modification. So in this video we are going to talk about various kinds of modifications which we see in the stem. So if we talk of the modifications of the stem, the modifications can be divided majorly or broadly into three types. The first is the underground modification. So here this will be the first type of modification which we see. The second is the sub-aerial modifications and the third type of modification is the aerial modification. So we find the stem undergoes three major modifications, that is depending upon the characteristics we have divided them into three, and these are further of different types. So we are going to study one by one what are the various types of modification. Let us start first with the underground modification. So as the term goes, underground modification, here the stem is underground and it is modified chiefly for the storage of the food and the perennation. So we know that the food is stored in the form of starch in the case of plants. So in this case, the stem over here acts as a site where the food is being stored. So the food is storing over here, and also this stored food is utilized mainly during the unfavorable condition. So perennation, when we are saying perennation is a term, that means that the food will be stored, or the stored food is helpful for the plant during the unfavorable condition or to survive through the unfavorable condition. So the underground modifications basically help in the storage of the food, the perennation, and the chief or the most important point is that the stem is underground. Now let us talk one by one what are the various modifications when we see of the underground stem. So over here the first modification is it is in the form of rhizome. So rhizome is the very good example or a common example is ginger. The rhizome is an underground stem where you find several roots and there are several nodes and internodes over here in the case of rhizome. So the rhizome has, these are the internode, the space between these two is the internode and over here is the node. So the rhizomes are the first, the bulb, that is the onion, and all of us have seen the structure of onion. It has roots growing down and the leaves. So this onion is an example, or the garlic is also an example of an underground modification of stem. The corn, colocasia, or in Hindi we call it as arvi, that is also a good example of an underground modification. In colocasia also the stem is highly swollen and you can see the structure of the nodes and internodes, but over here the nodes and internodes are not as clear as we see in the case of ginger or the rhizome modification of the stem. Then we have the potato, which is an example of the tuber type. So the four, these are the sides. Also in the case of potato, as we have seen, it is the structure that is known as the eye This is the starch is stored over here in the potato, and also this is the stored food for the plant, and also the eye serves as a means of vegetative propagation. So if suitable conditions are there, you can see shoots coming up from here. So we find that in all these cases, the site or the stem is swollen, it is underground, it is storing the food, and because of it, it is swollen, and also it helps for this nature of the stem helps in the perennation or the survival of the plant during the unfavorable condition. So these four are the further modifications of the stem, where the rhizome, bulb, corm and the tuber are four different types of the underground modification. Coming to the subaerial modification. Subaerial modification means the stem is partly above, that is, it starts from the ground, goes up, and then partly on the ground or the underground level. So over here, when we are saying it is partly underground or at level of ground. What does that mean? That means that the stem, these are the roots, the stem will grow for a certain period into the aerial part, and either it will turn down below the ground or it will remain parallel to the ground. So it is such type of stem modification is known as subaerial, that means half. Now over here, when we are talking, it includes four major types. The first is the runner. So when we talk of this, the first is the runner type. Example is strawberry and the grass. Now over here, when we talk of the strawberry and the grass, the plants are mostly at the level. This is the soil I have made, and over here the plants are growing, the roots are adventitious, and the plants develop and roots are inside, not very deep, but the stem is either at the level of the ground, it does not get inside, but it is moving along. And the main function over here, the main function over here is they give or they help in the vegetative propagation, and the stem over here helps in the vegetative propagation. The group of plants which belong to the subaerial modifications are known as creepers over here. Now when we talk of the other type, that is the sucker type. So in the runner, if we have seen, the plant is growing but the stem is at the level, not very high, it is at the level of the ground. And when we talk of the sucker, in the sucker, chrysanthemum is a very good example. So sucker, in this type of development, what happens is the plant will grow, these are the roots, the plant will grow, and one of the lateral branch will grow long, will go deep inside the soil, and will develop roots over here, which will later on develop as a plant. This will cut off later on, and this will develop as a new plant. So the sucker and runner are different in a way, because in sucker the stem is parallel to the ground, whereas in the case of sucker, the one of the lateral branches go deep inside the soil, that is, it goes inside the soil, and at the end it moves up where it develops the roots, and from that portion the stem or the new plant develops. This process continues. That's why we say the stem helps in vegetative propagation. This is the sucker type. The third type, this is, we are talking of sucker. This is the runner. Example is grass. Then we have the stolon. The stolon is a plant which is going up for a certain period of time and then it falls like jasmine and mint. So here this is the soil, the plant grows and the leaves develop when the new plant is developed from here only. So it does not go deep inside the soil. This is the third type. The fourth is the offset type. We find mostly this in the aquatic plant. So Pistia or water hyacinth is a very good example where a tuft of leaves, a group of leaves, that means it is present, and this is the stem, the aquatic plant, and this is the offset. And the roots develop over here. This is again a tuft of, and here. So this is the tuft which is marked over here in the center, and this stem at nodes will give rise to the lateral branches. So the short aerial branches and roots will develop at the nodes in the case of the subaerial modifications. Now where the node is present, it will be the area where the branches of a new plant or the new branch will be developed or the new plant will be developed. The plant will be called as creepers. Aerial modification also, we call those plants as creepers only, because over here when we talk the difference between the subaerial and aerial modification, over here the stem is aerial only because it is performing a different function. Let us talk now about the aerial modification. The aerial modification developed from axillary bud. Now when we are talking of the buds, this is the stem and the leaf over here. This structure over here is the axillary bud. This is the axil and this is the axillary bud. There can be two positions of the bud. Other position can be terminal. This is the terminal bud, which is at the end, and this which is forming at the axil, this is the axil. So the bud formed at the axil is known as the axillary bud. So if you observe carefully, any plant which is having tendrils or which has the stem which is modified into the aerial modification, it will be developing from the axillary bud. This type of modification mainly helps the plant or it gives the support. So it is mainly, we are talking of support over here. Beside that, it also provides protection, as we'll be seeing the various modifications. So over here, we'll be talking about the modification which are aerial modifications. So the first is the tendril type, in which if you observe carefully the tendril, these are the structures, they will be finding a support, and it in turn it will provide the support. There are various kinds of plants if we talk of the creeper or the tendril type. So these plants, this is the tendril, which is again a modified stem, and this is in supports which helps the plant to grow. So example is cucumber. There are many examples of this particular modification. Then we have the thorns. Thorns over here are again modification of the stem, and the function over here is the protection. So the leaf is here, in mostly we find in the citrus family, that is the family which is lemon and all. If you observe carefully, you will find thorn, that is a modification of the stem again. Here it is mainly serving the purpose of protection. It is not forming the tendrils or the helping in providing the support, but over here it is actually helping the plant with the protection. The third modification over here when we talk is of the aerial modification is phylloclad. The phylloclad is an example which all of you are familiar with, and that is open shear. So here, this flattened structure, that is a modified stem only. And here, the food is stored, and this modification, that is the phylloclad and the cladotype. Both the type of modifications are found in desert areas, especially the phylloclad. So here the thorns are the leaves. The thorns which we see, or the spines that we see, are the leaves, and the stem modifies into a fleshy leaf-like structure. This is a modification to survive the extreme heat or extremely high temperatures of the desert region. So phylloclad, in which the plant or the stem shows the modification in the form of leaf-like structure, and this leafy-like structure is a modification of the stem, whereas the leaves are modified as the spines. So they are protecting the plant, and this leafy structure has lots of fleshy structure over here. Coming to cladode. Cladode also is an example of the aerial modification where the plant, the stem is modified into leaf-like structures. Ruscus and asparagus are the example of cladode type. Over here, the difference between the cladode, it is also fleshy. This is also fleshy. Ruscus is also fleshy, but not as fleshy as the open shear. It is leaf-like structure. This is the modification stem. It is fleshy, but over here we find both internodes and nodes, whereas this structure is not very clear. Bulbil is another type of modification. This is the fifth type of modification which is found in agave. So it is various kinds of modification we are seeing in the case of plants where the stem is performing different function apart from performing the important function of holding the various structures of the plant, providing the media through which the various kinds water, minerals, nutrients are being transported, and also it is providing certain growth substance. But apart from that, it is performing various other important functions. So we see over here the different types of modifications of the stem.